Hi, and welcome to another of Econolicy Africa's conversations. My name is Oluwatobi Ogundele, and I'm the team lead at Econolicy Africa. Today, I have a wonderful panel of ladies from the CCPC Zambia, and we'll be talking about all things competition related. I'll give the ladies just 60 seconds to introduce themselves. I'll start with Miss Luyamba. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Toby, and it's a pleasure to have us on your program. My name's Luyamba Mpamba, and I lead the Measures and Monopolies Department at the Competition and Consumer Protection in Zambia. My role at the Commission involves the assessment of measures and acquisitions, as well as the assessment of abuse of dominant cases. So I really have been with the Commission for a very long time. I've been with the Commission for the past 18 years. So I've been doing the enforcement of competition and consumer protection most of my life. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Ms. Luyamba, and thank you for that very succinct introduction. So I'll move over to Ms. Maureen to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Alu. Good afternoon from Zambia. Good morning where you are, I suppose. My name is Maureen Banda, and I'm Director, Legal and Corporate Affairs for the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, Zambia. I have been in this role since 2013, so this makes it 11 years for me. My role is to offer legal support services to the board, to management and staff of the Commission. So that involves being board secretary to the Board of Commissioners, being legal advisor to the board, as well as to management. In that role is also incorporated the role of legal counsel. So I am also legal counsel for the Commission, meaning that I take up cases on behalf of the Commission, either to litigate or to prosecute if it's criminal cases. The lawyers at the Commission have been gazetted as public prosecutors for purposes of enforcing the Competition and Consumer Protection Act. So we do prosecute cases as well. That then involves when there's a determination by the executive director that a case is supposed to go to court for prosecution, we will take it up as a Department of Legal. And where matters have been taken on by the board, they've adjudicated upon them, and their appeals, these appeals would go to the tribunal. So we'll start with the tribunal, attend to cases in the tribunal. From the tribunal, the cases are now appealable to the Court of Appeal. From the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. So it's a whole stay like that. That is my role. Thank you.
Wow, it's a full-packed role. Thank you, Ms. Maureen, for that introduction. And I'll hand over to, last but not the least, definitely, Ms. Mwansa to introduce herself for 60 seconds.
Thank you, Olu. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Mwansa Saka. I have been with the Commission for a little over 6 years. I am currently the Senior Investigator in the Department of Restrictive Business Practices. And in that role, we investigate anti-competitive practices that may include any other restrictive practices, cartels, and the like. We also assess anti-competitive agreements, both vertical and horizontal agreements, and the like. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. So ladies, a warm welcome to this conversation that I know promises to be interesting. And our topic for the day is, are competitive markets a prerequisite for development in Africa? We'll be getting a Zambian perspective. Before we go into the questions, I'd like to issue a disclaimer that the views we express here are ours and do not represent the opinions or the views of our organizations. So let's get right into the questions, ladies. The first question I have for you, kind of to warm up the conversation, is I'd like us to have a quick chat, or at least to reach some consensus on why we need Africa's markets to be competitive. I'll hand over to Ms. Mwansa to kickstart the answer to that question for us.
Thank you, Olu. So I think it goes without saying that competition is very essential in all markets, be it the Zambian market, Africa, and globally. So competition fosters innovation. And I think for competitors, innovation is the bedrock for their businesses because they want to ensure that they try to strive to differentiate themselves from their competitors. And this also helps them to attain market share and make the profits that they're in the business for. So with this innovation that is fostered by competition, we then have qualities coming into play, because I think we've seen that in the digital space or with the evolution of technology. We have new models of technology that are brought onto the market every other year. This is a clear example of what competition can do on markets. So we also have to appreciate that not only quality is going to be something that's going to come up from the innovation that we enjoy, but we're also going to have a variety of goods and services that the consumer can enjoy, as well as subsequent reduced prices. Some other things that we need to discuss is how competitive markets are attractive to domestic and foreign investments. Investors thrive in competitive markets. So once investments come in, there is definitely going to be economic growth, as well as job creation. Wherever there's investment, there's definitely job creation. And job creation leads to decreased rates of unemployment. And that also leads to better living standards and just general social development. And in addition to what I've just mentioned, I think competition is going to sort of encourage intra-Africa competition. I think African countries will be able to trade with one another. This is also going to encourage for trade and non-trade barriers to be reduced, because countries that have high trade barriers are going to be incentivized to reduce those barriers, because import competition is going to be enjoyed by the local or domestic market. So with this import competition, we're also going to see, I think we've seen this in the fast-moving consumer goods sector. There's a lot of innovation that comes up when they're facing import competition. We have seen people concentrate on their quality when they're faced with much more import competition, when they've enjoyed some sort of dominance in the market. So all in all, I think fostering competitions would lead to more resilient and prosperous economies. And I think that's exactly what Africa needs right now.
Thank you very much for making that wonderful case for why Africa's markets should be competitive, because it's very much tied to the development of the continent. I'll leave that question open to anyone else that will want to pitch in. Ms. Maureen.
Thank
on why
you.
Africa's market to be competitive.
I think Mwansa covered much in relation to the wider African sphere. But if you have to look at it from the local scene, my point would be that we need competitive markets intra-country, because this is a field where we get small players to participate in these markets. If there's no well-regulated competition in these markets, you will find that the bigger players will use their financial muscle to stifle the small players, the new entrants, and really foreclose the markets. So what would end up happening within the countries is that you have monopolies that then give a blind eye in most cases to innovation, to improving on their products. And then there's also exploitation of consumers. Where markets are well regulated, governments make it a point to come up with standards in relation to how goods are supposed to be produced, for example. So you get enhanced consumer product safety, which is, like Mwansa said, what Africa needs right now. But then before we even get to the African sphere, we need to have these in our domestic markets. It's what we have inside that we'll take outside. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that addition, Ms. Maureen. So moving on to the next question I have, which is closely tied to the first one. We know competition enforcement is made up of different types of activities. We have mergers and acquisitions. In some jurisdictions, they enforce provisions for deceptive marketing. We also have some that engage in market inquiries. And there are a plethora of many things that competition authorities can do within their portfolio. So my question is for Zambians, and in enforcing competition, how do you prioritize which of these activities you should focus on? I'll hand over to Ms. Maureen to help us answer that question.
Thank you again, Olu. In the scene of Zambia, what we have is that in every successful year, we will have a work plan that will follow to prioritize areas that we're going to focus on. But competition being the way it is, you cannot cast everything in stone, because issues will arise that will need your attention that you had not put down on paper. And you're not going to overlook that. Obviously, you will have to find time to address the issues as they arise. So aside from the traditional roles that we take to enforce, we make it a point to ensure that we engage industry through compliance programs. We offer these programs to the industry for free without any charge. So they approach the commission, and we will have staff attending to them, ensuring that they are taught on how not to find themselves on the wrong side of the law. That is one aspect. We also have a wider sphere where we conduct public awareness campaigns, where members of the public as well as businesses are taught on how to ensure that they know their rights, they know their responsibilities when it comes to competition and consumer protection in Zambia. I am mentioning both because the commission in Zambia is set up to look at both competition as well as consumer protection. So another route that we use is we engage school-going children in clubs. These are competition and consumer protection clubs in schools, which are under the patronage of teachers that have information on competition, they have information on consumer protection, and the children are incorporated in these clubs. They are given knowledge on how the law operates, and at times they do actually accompany members of staff in the field just to see how the law is implemented. So these young and the youth, they then act as advocates of the commission in the communities where they come from. So that tends to work out quite well. Under our research unit, we also have deliberate efforts to ensure that we conduct market research, we conduct market inquiries, we do studies, and those inform how we then react in terms of what would be the priority areas, where are the gaps that are being identified, and what are the appropriate resolutions that we are going to come up with that are going to ensure that we are responding to the needs of the public. When it comes to the law itself, whenever we have laws that are being reviewed, we are consulted as the commission, and our participation is to ensure that these laws are in conformity with the tenets of competition as well as consumer protection. So when it comes to that, we recently actually even had our own law reviewed. We have an amended law as of December 2023. Among the issues that we identified to help us in enhancement of enforcement was the embracing of e-markets. We are now going to enforce trade, online trade, which we were not able to previously because it was not provided for in the law. When it comes to markets, we have relocation of assets, the core assets that are leaving the Zambian jurisdiction. We have a provision now that is guiding how those are to be treated so that they do not leave an unlevered playing field in the markets where they're coming from. We also have looked at issues of domestication of the competition, the commercial competition regulations of 2004. This really is to enhance regional trade as well as cooperation. So we are yet to come up with regulations that should inform the enforcement of the new law, but we do have a new law in place to answer to the challenges that we faced in enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maureen. So if anyone watching feels that competition agencies are not busy, there you have it. There's a lot to be done in that space. Thank you for covering all those. So I'll move on to the next question. So kind of zooming into one of the enforcement activities that most agencies, competition agencies around the world will be involved in is mergers and acquisitions. So for those watching, a merger occurs when two companies combine to form a new one. And in some cases, this could reduce competition in the relevant market. So for the CCPC Zambia, what factors would you usually consider when you assess whether a merger is pro-competitive or anti-competitive? So before you declare that we reject this merger, we accept it, do you look at public interest provisions? Can you take us through the kind of tests that will be run by your agency? Ms. Luyamba.
Thank you so much, Toby, for that question. When assessing measures, it's very important that you undertake a detailed competition assessment in order to determine whether at the end of the day, if that major transaction that the Commission has received will lead to anti-competitive effects on the market or whether to be more pro-competitive. So a number of steps have to be taken into consideration when we receive these measures. And for starters, we have to look at the market structure in which these merging parties are operating in. For instance, if both merging parties are operating in the same market, it could be the education or the hotel sector. It means that if a merger occurs between two parties in the same market or sector, that would lead to lessened competition. So we have to understand and determine for example, the market shares, how big these market players are in the market. Are they dominant in the market, or they're very small businesses whereby even if this merger occurs, there will be no alteration of the current market structure. So we have to determine the levels of other competitors that exist in that market and the level of concentration in that market. Now, when we talk about level of concentration, we're talking about how many active players are operating in that sector. If it is concentrated, highly concentrated, it means you have very few players. And having a merger in that market will reduce competition levels. So we need to understand the market structure as well as the market shares. Secondly, we have to look at the potential for market entry. What has been the history in this market, the relevant market that we're looking at? How many new entrants have come in, for example, in the last 5 to 10 years? If it's an easy market to enter, you will notice that a number of players have come into the market freely and they have stayed competitive. But markets that are closed, you find that you can have 10 to 20 years and no new entry is coming into that sector in that market that prevent market players from entering. And when they do enter, you find that in terms of horizontal and vertical integrations that would take place when these two parties, merging parties, come together. Would there be an overlap in terms of their processes or systems that they work in? Now, we could have a merger that occurs between two merging parties at different levels of production, so that if they merge, you find that one of the two will start operating in a market where it also now competes with some of its customers in the downstream market. So we need to understand those vertical linkages that will be affected by that market, as well as the horizontal effects that will be an issue if this merger is approved. Of course, when we're looking at mergers, it's not the Commission's aim to reject mergers. Where we see that we might have competition concerns, we have to come up with conditions that will keep these anti-competitive effects the minimum levels. And the other thing that we focus on as Zambia is public interest. That's a very big thing in an economy like Zambia. And some of the public interest issues we look at is job creation or job losses that will occur as a result of that major cut taking place. So those are the things that we focus on, whether the merger will actually have an effect on public interest as well. So the size of the firm matters, as well as the type of the transaction that is taking place. Where you have two direct competitors merging, you're more likely to have competition effects. But where you have different merging parties coming in, operating in different markets and deciding to merge, the competitive effects are quite minimal because they're operating in different markets, and the different customers and businesses are affected by that transaction.
Thank you. Thank you for taking us through that. Very useful and informative. While we still have you, I'll move on to question 4. And I think it's tied very much to mergers, and it's an area of competition law that I find fascinating. And that's the issue of market power. And there's evidence of increasing market power globally, but even more especially on the continent of Africa. And, you know, some reasons given, at least by the OECD and other researchers, is because of the unsuccessful nature of some of the abuse of market power or abuse of dominance cases prosecuted by different agencies in Africa. So even when such abuse of market power cases come to the competition agency, sometimes this might be unsuccessful. And also increasing market power resulting from what we just discussed now, merger activities. So there's been more mergers and acquisitions on the continent as well. So I wanted us to speak specifically about a sector of the Zambian economy, and that's the copper mining sector. And recently, there have been increase in merger activity around that sector. So as a competition enforcer, are there instances where we need these mergers, taking to mind that we're wary of, you know, abuse of market power, abuse of dominance? Are there instances where we actually need firms to merge because it's necessary for development of an industry or a sector of the economy? So I'll leave that question for you, Ms. Luyamba, to explain to us what is happening, at least regarding copper mining.
Okay, thank you for that question as well. For starters, when it comes to mergers and acquisitions, businesses decide to merge for various reasons. Of course, some of the key reasons might be gaining economic strength, or just increasing their market share, or entering new markets. So yes, there are times that measures that occur do lead into the building of dominance in the sector in which they are operating in. And I know you made mention to the copper mining sector. As Zambia, we have seen a number of measures and acquisitions that have taken place in the mining sector of Zambia. And to answer your question, sometimes it is necessary to engage in measures and acquisitions if we are to have a specific sector like the mining sector thrive and develop, because I think it's important that we want to notice economic development in every economic sector. And sometimes for current businesses that are operating in there are not capable of growing at the pace that they would want to. And the only way they can do that is if they enter into mergers and acquisitions. It will be with mergers and acquisitions, they have a direct link with attaining economies of scale. Now, we all know that that is one of the main aims of a business. You want to attain those economies of scale because it gives you the ability to compete in the market, as well as reduce your costs in terms of your production, because the more economies of scale you attain, the larger your production output. And with that, it tends to lower your cost of production. So that is one of the reasons that would come out of businesses like mines in the mining sector, entering into mergers and acquisitions, because you then attain those economies of scale. Also, we've noticed that larger companies, for example, merged entities, have that ability to access capital from the market, because when you present a healthy financial statement, you're more likely to be given, to be financed when you tend to source for capital outside the country or locally. That may not be the case when it comes to smaller businesses. They find it much more difficult to access capital. But for a merged entity, because of the strengths that they present, they're more likely to have access to capital on the market. Mergers and acquisitions also lead to increased competitiveness in the mining sector. You find that this may be a mining that has been failing or not operating at optimum level, but when it is acquired by a larger mining company that takes over this business and it pumps in more capital into this mine, you find that it starts operating optimally and more competitively in the sector. The mining sector is capital intensive, so there's a lot of investment that goes into these different investments for mining in order for you to attain your own economies of scale or recoup your investments that you put in when starting that business. Also, with merged entities, we see a lot of innovation and a lot of new technology coming in. So with two businesses coming in, there's that merging or meshing of skills and technology, and you tend to utilize or maximize on the strengths of the merged entity. Each party brings in their strength, and as a result, you see that level of innovation going up in terms of the mining equipment that they put or invest into that business. In addition to market expansion, because you want to be in more than one market, mergers happen nationally and internationally. So you find a emerging entity coming from Europe acquiring a Zambian mine. So there's that market expansion for the products and services that are produced outwardly. So it allows that merged entity to enter new markets, increase their product portfolio, as well as these are geographical markets. You enter these new geographical markets where you haven't been before. So it is one way of spreading your wings, if I may say that. It gives you that ability to do that. Of course, when it comes to risk management, you tend to manage your risks better. Because the bigger you are, the bigger the finance, the capability to finance your investments, as well as take care of your risks, associated risks. Like I said, the mining sector requires a lot of innovation and technology. And of course, we've seen the usage of AI coming in of course, the detection of minerals. And this technology is something that mining companies are now opting to use. And if I may just add that the negative side to that is that with the usage of AI, which may be seen to be more effective, this can also have negative repercussions where we see jobs being lost because AI will take up jobs that are being done by individuals. So for us as Zambia, that still remains a key public interest matter, and we have to kind of weigh the two in the balance. In as much as we want to see the mining sector thrive, we also have to see how we can protect certain jobs for Zambians.
Thank you. Thanks for that response. And I like that you highlight the sector-specific considerations for mergers. So there's a school of thought that, well, let's ban all merger activity because it's increasing significantly dominance and market power of certain, firms or companies. But then, taking that approach to all markets or all sectors may be counterproductive because market structures, like you said, are different. And this is the work of competition agencies to look specifically at the market structures and then to intervene when necessary. And I like that you bring up the AI, artificial intelligence issue. So it's a nice segue to Ms. Mwansa, because our next question kind of touches on digital markets. So Ms. Mwansa, our next question goes to just this new data-driven economy that we're in. We can't really deny that things are becoming more online, more digital. And even traditionally, when cartels where they'll say the cartelists will be in a smoke-filled room fixing prices. Now firms are using pricing algorithms. They are more advanced in how, anti-competitive activities can occur. Just the way our markets are evolving. They are no more, we still have the brick and mortar markets, but now most things are happening online. So as a competition enforcer, at least from your perspective, from the CCPC Zambia, or even globally, are you seeing or do you envisage an increased uptake of data science, data analytics, the use of artificial intelligence to support the work of competition enforcement that you do at the CCPC? Ms. Mwansa.
Thank you, Olu. So definitely, I think we've seen an increase in digitalization as well as data-driven economies. So I think we're going to see a significant uptake of AI and data analytical tools. And I think this is going to be something that's also going to change the landscape of competition enforcement. I'll give an example of Zambia. We recently introduced e-procurement. So this is where procurement tenders, enterprises are usually encouraged to submit their bids electronically. So during our screening processes, we found that we had a lot of information previously because we were looking at screening into the road sector. So we found that it was a very tedious exercise because our screening was over a period of years. If you're going to identify a pattern of anti-competitive behavior, you will have to go through a period of years. So we found that it was a very, very tedious process. And I think with the introduction of AI, these algorithms will help us as competition enforcement to sort of like sieve through the data much more quickly. These algorithms will be able to flag out any anti-competitive behavior that would be from that bulk historical data. And I know certain jurisdictions have also tried to develop screening tools, but developing of screening tools has proved to be very costly, and it's a conversation that we keep having in our regional interactions and forums, because we've been needing a screening tool for our bid rigging detection. But I think with the introduction of AI and data analytical tools, it will help us sort of flag out and give us more insight as to whether we must proceed with investigating certain sectors. These tools will also give us much more insight into market dynamics, competition behavior, as well as consumer trends. So I think the more these tools evolve, I think it's really going to play a critical role in how we enforce competition law, which is going to foster a healthy competition environment.
Thank you for that response. So moving on to, well, should I say easier issues or maybe more difficult, depending on your perspective of things. My very last question for the panel is about women representation in the African competition space. And I always ask this question to women anytime I have the opportunity to have such a conversation, because I think it's good to know what is happening. And would you say personally that women are well represented in the African competition space in Zambia? And that question has a second part, which I'll also ask now. I'm thinking of a young woman that wants to come into the competition enforcement space. You know, what would be your advice in terms of skills, you know, soft skills, technical skills that can lead to a successful career in this space? I'll start with Ms. Maureen to kick us off on women representation in the African competition space. You're muted, Ms. Maureen.
Hello, thanks once again. It is somewhat a difficult question because when you come to the table with questions like that, you want to come with numbers in your favor. Yes. So when the numbers are not favoring you, you kind of drag your feet and still try to strike a balance. I would say that we're improving, but more needs to be done. If you had asked me this at the close of last year, I would have sat with you and proudly told you that CCPC is a banner carrier in relation to women representation and competition, because we did have the numbers, but we have recently had an exodus that has left us kind of in a limpy position. So let me start from a happy place. If you are talking about the level of directors, I would happily tell you that we're sitting pretty there with 60% directors being female. So that's a good place to be. But like I said, at the lower end, things have tended in the negative somewhat. We are not in a very bad place. We have 48% representation below the director level. But when we used to be at over 60, that is quite an uncomfortable position to be. But I will stretch it and make it happy still, because our observation is that the women that have left the commission have 90% of the time, even more than 90%, joined a sector regulator, where the knowledge of competition is not only needed, but is used. It's essential in the undertaking of their duties. So they have left the commission, but they're still professing competition. I think that's a comfortable space to be. And then when you talk about that...
That's wonderful news.
Thank you. And then when you talk about that young lady that is looking to take up competition or a career in competition law, the key is to be intentional, I would say. We have as foundational courses law and economics, which are really much preached about. And on any day, I would encourage somebody to take up those courses and prepare themselves as they intend to get into this line of practice. But it's not always the education that speaks. It's also where you place yourself, how you assert yourself, how interested you are in taking up the career, and also how determined you are. We are in this discussion with Mwansa, and I'll use her as an example. I'm sure she wouldn't mind. She came into the commission doing research on a project with specialization in supply chain management. When she was in the commission, she developed an interest in competition. And at the end of that project, applied for a job, qualified for it. Now she's a senior officer in restrictive business practices. She is among our best investigators, and she has done quite well for herself. So it's because she saw what she liked, and she put herself out to do it. She put herself out to learn, to be mentored, and she's now where she is. So I would encourage that young woman to network, to look for mentors. If there's an opening in an institution like ours, or in law firms and other institutions that deal with competition, go for it. Start from there. Work yourself up. It's always possible. We always need the numbers. Another thing is to read up. You stay constantly informed on the happenings in this sphere. We're having this discussion now. So obviously, Econolicy would be one of those sites to look at. You look at OECD, you look at ICM, you look at SCF, look at the supranational institutions, the African Continental Free Trade Area, regional bodies like COMESA Competition Commission. You look at the local front, we have commissions like ourselves. And for us, we always remain open to sharing information on what we do and how we do it. So anybody can do what we're doing with determination, with interest. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Wonderful response. Ms. Mwansa, you've been put on the spot, so I have to come to you. So what would your advice be personally, just from your experience over the past 6 years that you said you've been working at the CCPC? Have you enjoyed the process? And if you had to advise young ladies, young people, what would you say has helped you move up so quickly in your career in this space?
Okay, so my advice would be any young lady that has interest in competition, the slightest bit of interest in competition, should pursue it. I think it's already been said that competition is a very niche field, you know, and it's very dynamic. It changes faces every day. So should you have the interest in competition, apply yourself. It's constant reading each and every day. You have to keep updated with best practices. So again, find a mentor. I think I've been very well mentored in the commission. I've received tremendous support, and it's also been encouraging to have women at the top. I think the two have been directors ever since I joined the commission. So seeing women already at the top, knowing that there's potential for growth in the field has been very encouraging. So should you have interest in it, you will find it very, very enjoyable. Enforcement is a very, very enjoyable field. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mwansa. It's always interesting when I speak to competition enforcer. Each and every person is always so passionate about the work, and I'm impressed by that. And, you know, I obviously get the same vibes from this group, permit me to use that word. And it's just to show the importance of the work being done and the fact that people working in that space actually care about the fact that our markets should be competitive. I'll leave the space open for Ms. Luyamba. Any final thoughts, comments on this particular question, or just in general?
Thank you so much. I think Maureen and Mwansa have covered that question very well. But just to add that, as Mwansa had put it, for you to be a successful investigator or economist or whatever title you'll be called, to be an enforcer, you really have to be passionate about what you do. It's not an easy subject to learn. So it's not something you learn in a year. We always joke about it at the office that you need at least 2 years to be grounded in competition assessment or enforcement, because it takes that long for you to actually build that wealth of knowledge to speak comfortably on any aspect of competition. But I think at the helm of it, or you have to be passionate about what we do. So for those that are passionate, you see that they tend to maybe stay longer as enforcement officers. That would be my take.
Well, thank you, ladies. We have come to the end. Sadly, I wish we could go on, but we have to end. We've come to the end of our conversation, and you ladies were amazing. And I'm hoping that anyone that gets to come across this video will learn about the work that the CCPC does in Zambia, and will be able to key into some of this advice that you've willfully shared with us. Thank you for sharing from your wealth of knowledge. We appreciate your time, and we wish the CCPC all the best in enforcing competition law in Zambia. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, Olu. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you very much.